Hello, my name is Elizabeth. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm really glad you're here because I read a little novel by the name How I Live Now by Meg Rosoff. It's not as disturbing as the books that I usually write about or talk about, but it is does involve war, and I don't think anything's more disturbing than war. So this is the story, and this is there's also a movie. It came out, I think, in 2012 or 2013. I have not seen the movie. So this is the story of Daisy. She's an American girl who is sent to live with her cousins in England, and once she's there, war breaks out, and nobody can travel. So her Aunt Pen, who is out of town, and her father, who is an American, is in America, cannot make it to where she is, leaving her without adult supervision. She and she's with her four cousins: Edmund, Isaac, Osbert, and Piper. Osbert is the oldest, Edmund and Isaac are twins, and Piper is the youngest. I'm just make it clear that I am going to tell you about the novel and not the movie. And just from the trailer that I've watched, I can see that it is very different. Like, the twins aren't twins. The oldest is gone. Some of the traits of a bunch of the like important traits all end up on one character in the movie, it seems like. So, but that's all I really know about the movie. So my trigger warnings for this are war, incest, eating disorder, specifically anorexia, PTSD, the childhood situation of not being fully in charge of your own life, which usually isn't a big deal, but in this story, it's very, very traumatic. So, if that sounds interesting to you, join me for the ride. Elizabeth is 15, and she has never, ever gone by the name Elizabeth. Her father says she was way more of a Daisy from the moment he met her, so that's what everyone calls her. Daisy lives in New York City with her father and stepmother. Daisy refers to Davina, her stepmother, as a step monster, and the baby she's pregnant with as Damien, devil spawn. She's been sent overseas to be with her cousins and mother's sister on a remote farm in the English countryside because Davina cannot deal with her anymore, and Daisy knows it. She is impossibly thin. Okay, it began as a defense mechanism because she truly believed that Davina was trying to poison her. But she admits that she kept it up because she enjoys the feeling of being hungry and the control. And she loved that it drove everyone crazy and cost her father a fortune in shrinks to try to fix her. To me, it's pretty clear that she's trying to control her life, have something that she can control. And she doesn't otherwise have anything that she can control, so this is what she's doing. When she gets to Heathrow, which is the airport in London, she looks for Aunt Pen, but she's only seen her in pictures, and she's not there. Who she does find, she's got a sign for her, is her cousin Edmund. He is 14, and she is shocked that he is smoking a cigarette and that he drove the truck to the airport and will be driving them home. He parked in a spot that allows him to drive over the grass and avoid paying for parking. Once Daisy gets to the home, she's introduced to Osbert, who's 16, Piper, who's 9, and Isaac, who's Edmund's twin, who's, of course, then that means he's also 14. She tells us that there are dogs and goats and chickens, and the chickens lay blue eggs, and the dogs and goats are pets. And she describes this one goat that will gently headbutt you until you start to scratch his ears. And once you do, he goes into sort of a seeming trance, and he'll lean on you more and more and more so that when you stop, he'll just fall over. If you know anything about like little goats, that's not shocking. Then there's Isaac. Isaac is described as not saying much, but knowing everything. That you might not know he's there, but when you need something, you'll turn around and he'll be offering it to you. It's uncanny. He also always seems to know what the animals want, need, or are thinking. He's pretty special. Osbert is the oldest and the only one who attends school right now. Daisy is set to start school in the fall with Isaac, Edmund, and Piper. Piper is instantly enamored with Daisy, and as soon as she arrives, and whenever they are near one another, Piper is holding Daisy's hand, and Daisy finds it really sweet. During the evening of her first day in England, Daisy meets Aunt Pen, who calls her Elizabeth and says, "Oh my gosh, you look so much like your mother." Daisy disagrees. Her mother was beautiful, and Daisy just isn't, at least according to her. When war breaks out and all the airports close, Aunt Pen is out of town. At first, the kids think they need to do something to protect themselves, so they set themselves up in the barn and they sleep in it. But after only a couple nights, they return to the house because they need to shower and they need to get warm, and they just end up staying in the house and not returning to the barn. Authorities will eventually show up and check on them. Daisy sees that their lists have check marks and X's and question marks, and the man puts a couple of checks and X's and question marks on their paperwork. And he's surprised to find out that Osbert is the oldest person on the estate, but decides that it's fine since there's really nothing he can do about it at this point. So he tells them that rations may begin to be distributed, and if so, they will be included. Meanwhile, Daisy reports that Edmund is making her feel the way a cousin is not supposed to make her feel. One day when they're in Daisy's room, Edmund kisses her. Gently at first, but then she describes it as not at all gentle. They begin to sleep during the day so that they can spend their nights alone together. They begin a sexual relationship. They start sleeping together. And they're first cousins. Their moms are sisters. So, I mean, I think when it comes to disturbing, that's probably the most, taboo thing in the story. Osbert then reports that the cell phones, text messaging, and emails have become unreliable, that either they bounce back or they show up on the other end differently than the way they were sent. It doesn't bother Daisy because she's happy to just read a book, but she can tell it's distressing to Osbert. The kids get used to their daily walk to town to pick up bread, butter, and milk. They get a little more milk because of the children. But then the walks have to stop because the countryside is quarantined. And it's due to what Daisy tells us ends up being a false report about smallpox. They only get their information from the other boys who would meet Osbert at the local pub when the kids walked into town because the newspapers have stopped completely. But now they have to stay on their own property, and the authorities start dropping off foodstuffs in large black plastic bags at the end of their driveway. And the rumor mill continues, and they get confirmation that there is indeed smallpox, but it's hard for Daisy to imagine things being so bad because she's in the English countryside during the best weather of May than they've had in years. The veggies are growing 6 inches a day. The red roses are in bloom all over the property. Flower gardens are bright with color, so Daisy doesn't feel like the terrible rumors could possibly be real because she is surrounded by all of this beauty. She's falling in love for the first time and having her first intimate relationship. She and Piper are very, very close. She's tight with Isaac. This is the best her life has ever been. Isaac then reports to everyone that the birds are so much happier now that there aren't people in cars all the time driving around. He says that they sing happier songs, they lay eggs and fly around happily, much more than they did before. She tells us that she and Edmund care trying to get enough of each other, but the more time they spend together, the more their hunger grows. She talks about being in love, about being together until exhaustion takes them, or stopping due to rawness and exhaustion. Otherwise, the two of them do their best to act normally when they have to help Piper search for honeycombs, for instance. The rationing allows Daisy to stay undernourished without anyone complaining, and she is beyond happy about it. The veggies in the garden are ripe, and the other kids are missing bread, but they manage. There starts to be sort of a worry in the neighborhood of where this food is coming from, right? Is it coming from the local market? Is it coming from the Red Cross? Is it coming from the army? Is it coming from the enemy? So some people in the neighborhood won't eat it because they think maybe the enemy's dropping it off and they're just trying to kill us. Osbert hears that it wasn't smallpox, it was measles, but either way, people are in fact dying. The new regulations came out telling everyone that they have to boil their water before drinking it and to be careful when using dangerous objects like knives because the hospitals are overrun with soldiers and are not available for little things like stitches. You're going to have to deal with that yourself. We can't handle that. Now, despite all of this, Daisy is surrounded by living things in a way she's never experienced before, having come from what she describes as an urban jungle. And as long as she can find the time and space to be with Edmund, she's happier than she's ever been before. But after many weeks of no visitors, a man appears on their doorstep. He is in his mid-30s, and he asks if they have any drugs. This confuses the kids, so he asks to speak with their mother, and Osbert explains that it's just the five of them. The man then introduces himself as Dr. Jameson. He explains that the hospitals are working with skeleton crews and all the medication has been saved for casualties from the war. So Dr. Jameson is walking door to door to see if people have any medicine that could be used to help neighbors who rely on those medicines. He's looking for antibiotics, blood pressure medication, insulin, things like that. The kids go into the house and look and leave Daisy and the doctor alone in the front hall of the house. Daisy says that things shift a bit after the doctor's visit, and one day Piper asks her if she's in love with Edmund. Daisy answers yes, she is, and Piper says that's good, because she also loves Edmund. That night, Piper asks to sleep in Daisy's bed with her, and Daisy agrees. At some point in the night, Edmund came in and got into the bed as well, and in the morning, Isaac comes looking for everyone and sees them and, all sleeping together in one bed, and he smiles, and then he goes to make breakfast. The next day, they put on clean clothes and head down to the river to swim. They don't put on clean clothes every day, by any stretch. All four of them end up in the cold water of the river. Daisy gets cold and lays in the sun to warm up. She imagines sinking into the ground so that she can stay under that tree forever. When Edmund gets out of the water, he lays down next to Daisy, and Piper throws a handful of petals over them. And when they ask why, Piper says, well, for love, of course. Oh, she's so sweet. A few days later, another visitor comes by, this one wearing a soldier's uniform. They're asked a litany of questions. How many rooms does the house have? How is the roof? Does it leak? What are the outbuildings on the property? Then they head back to the house, and Daisy hears that they will be sequestered elsewhere. The five children worry that they'll be separated. I mean, who's going to take in 5 children like them? Osbert ends up going off with the soldiers and returns happy because now he has a job. The rest of the kids would be demoted to civilian children. When the soldiers come back and take over the house, the kids try to be helpful or scarce so they won't be sent away. Osbert finds the kids and tells Piper and Daisy that they need to pack bags because they are going to be rehomed. Daisy says there is no way she's leaving to be rehomed, and Osbert murmurs that he's sorry, but, orders are orders, and Edmund then tells her not to worry, and I think Daisy is just too American in this situation. The English kids want her to just smile and nod and just go with, get on with things and just go with it. But she's American. So if she doesn't want to do something, she says it. But she goes upstairs and she packs a bag for her and Piper. Edmund tells her to take Jet. Jet is one of the dogs, one of the herding dogs that they have. And Daisy says that she'll find him. She'll find Edmund, and they'll find their way back to each other. And he nods, and he says, yes, we'll find our way back to each other. And they don't make a big deal about the goodbye because they think that they'll be separated for no more than like a week or two, maybe, at the most. But they're very, very wrong about that. So Daisy becomes very protective of Piper because now it's just the two of them. When the car shows up for them, they refuse to leave Jet behind, and finally the driver agrees to take the dog. They drive through towns where all the shops and houses are boarded up. Then they would, like a tank with soldiers smoking cigarettes and hanging off it would pass by them. And every few miles they'd have to go through a checkpoint. So things are very different now that there's a war on. They're placed with Mrs. and Colonel McElroy. She tells them to call her Jane, and it's clear that she has been crying. She's not thrilled about the dog that they brought, but she ends up warming up to the ideas. The girls were in a room that was once housed a teen boy. There are twin beds and pictures of female models on the walls and stuff like that. When the father gets home, Daisy wants to know where Isaac and Edmund are. Where have they moved to? He introduces himself to Daisy, who smiles, introduces herself back, followed by, I want to know where my cousins are. Yes, they have been relocated. He tells her where they are, but she wants so badly for him to show her on a map where they are so that she and Piper can run off to find them at some point. So she's trying to get information, and then she's making notes to try to remember where they are, because all she really wants is to get back to Edmund, right? And Isaac, but for her, it's really about Edmund. When they're finally able to go look for Piper's brothers, because they spend some time there. Some stuff happens. If you want to know all the details, you're going to have to read the book. But eventually, they are able to leave, and they go back to their house. And it's not in the best condition, but it is absolutely standing, and the roof is still working and whatnot. And it's really sad. They find everyone's favorite goat, the one that I was talking about earlier, and he is just skin and bones, and they have to put him down. It's really sad. And the brothers are not there. So the two just get on with surviving. Piper teaches Daisy about blackberries and chestnuts and potatoes and living off the earth. And for a while they live in the barn, but eventually they gravitate back to the big house. And one day, the phone rings. The phone rings. Like, the phone hasn't worked in a very long time. And there's no electricity. The phone is ringing. Now, I don't know how old you are, people who are watching this, but the old telephone lines pulled their own power from the telephone lines. So when the electricity would go out, the landlines would still work. Like, you could still make phone calls, even though the electricity was out. So the phone's ringing. And it's great because she's like, Piper looks at her and she looks at Piper, and Piper's like, doesn't even make a move towards the phone. But Daisy says, I'm a teenage girl from America. I can't let a phone just ring. Just probably very accurate. So she answers it. She doesn't say anything. She just picks up the phone. And there's a voice going, hello? Hello? If there's somebody there, please say something. And the story shifts. So the last thing we find out is that someone's just say something. And then Daisy tells us that she really confused all the people at the hospital by eating. Like, when did we get to a hospital and start eating? So it turns out, on the other end of that phone line was her father. And once he heard her voice, he became single-minded in getting her home. He pulled strings, he manipulated things. Turns out Daisy is actually one of the very first U.S. citizens to be returned overseas. Her father accomplished this by saying that she was mentally unstable because of all the shrinks and visits to the hospital because of her anorexia. There was paperwork that her father could use to say, she's unstable, we need to get her home. And he's got the connections. And so he does get her home. And when she gets there, of course, they put her straight into the hospital, but she doesn't have a problem eating anymore because she's in love. And all she wants is to get back to her family in England. So eventually they have to let her out. And all she cares about is getting back to her family as she sees Edmund, Isaac, and Piper. It took 6 years. So if she was 15 when the story started, and she was 15 during all the time that they were, dealing with the war, and then she got returned back home, 6 years later, she's 21 by the time she actually gets back to England. So she flies over to England again, shows up at Heathrow again, and dreams that it's Edmund, smoking a cigarette, picking her up like it was the first time. Of course, it's not. It's Piper. And her beau. His name is Jonathan. And they met on the volunteer line. He is a doctor, and she has been helping with wrangling the animals. And they're just, there isn't even really courtship. They meet, and then they know that they're each other's person. And Daisy says that she likes him right away. When they get back to the house, she sees Isaac. He's taller. He talks more, mostly to the animals, but he definitely talks more. And he hugs her fiercely. She was warned about Edmund and then taken to see him. He's more than thin. He's gaunt, pale. There are scars on his skin, on a lot of his skin. He sits in his chair and looks out into the world and doesn't even acknowledge Daisy. When he does finally look at her, there's anger and pain and fear in his face, in his expression, and it will take a very long time for him to even begin to open up. So Daisy actually gets to the point where she sits with him every day for a while. Just, talk to me, talk to me, talk to me. I'm here. I came back for you. And he just ignores her. And so eventually she starts to avoid him, which is when Isaac says he needs you. Please, even though he's acting like he doesn't, he does. And he needs to hear that you're here, and he needs to hear why. And just keep saying it, and just keep talking to him, and just keep being with him, and hopefully eventually it'll get through and he'll hear you. So in the meantime, Isaac won't tell her what happened. Piper won't tell her what happened. But Jonathan, Piper's, probably going to be husband, does fill her in. And he says that when they were sent to another farm, kind of like Piper and Daisy were, they were sent to another home to be rehomed, and they were in a small town. And these two boys, they're twins, and they're also very connected to the world around them. And they can both feel that something is coming. Something really bad is coming and is going to happen to the town that they're in. And they try talking to the person in charge of the town, which is, of course, a military person. And the military person is like, I understand you're scared, but, we can't just leave this whole town because you guys have a weird feeling. That's just not how the world works, right? And the two boys are absolutely convinced that something bad is coming. And for the first time in their entire lives, they end up on different sides of an issue. Isaac wants to leave. He's like, I don't want to stay here and die with these people. And Edmund is like, we have to stay and take care of these people. And it ends up becoming a physical fight. They're twins. Isaac ends up being the stronger. And he forces, through any means possible, including bullying and beating up and whatever, to get Edmund to leave with him. Isaac is cool with continuing on with whatever it is that happened to this neighborhood. Edmund is not. He's completely broken by it. Well, nearly completely broken. And then Jonathan tells her that Edmund got back to the house, the big house, 2 days after she left. A sucker punch. One of the first things that she gets out of Edmund is, why did you leave? Where did you go? Why weren't you here? And she tries to explain to him that she was a minor and that her father had connections and he wanted to get her home. And there was nothing she could do, and he got her home at a time when people weren't crossing, they weren't going overseas. And so it took 6 years for her to get back, to get to a place where she could actually get back, because she didn't have a medical reason for having to go back to England. She had to wait until she could just travel there on her own. And, and Edmund just doesn't quite get it, but she just keeps saying, I love you. I love you. I'm here for you. I want to be here with you. You are the only reason that I survived what I survived was keeping you in mind. You're the one I love. You're the one I care about. And slowly he starts to become a little more responsive and become a little more interactive with her. But by the time the story ends, the most that Edmund has done is taken Daisy's hand and hold it. But Daisy's okay with that. She's knows that this is where she needs to be, that next to Edmund, by Edmund's side, is where she will now be. And if or when there's a time when he's able to come back or is able to reach out, she will be there, because this is how she lives now for Edmund. It's very sweet. Very sad. Very sad. Poor Edmund. So the movie, Edmund is the oldest. There's no Osbert. Edmund is the oldest. He's the one who has the great relationship with animals, which was Isaac. And Isaac is younger than him, and then there's also Piper. So that alone means that there's differences. And then like they seem to be together when like bombs drop and whatnot, and that doesn't happen at all in the book. So I think the movie's probably fundamentally pretty different. The girl who stars in it has a name that I can't pronounce. She's Irish. I'm gonna put her picture up because I'm sure you know who she is, but Schwarza or something. I can't I don't know how to pronounce her name. I'm so sorry. But the Isaac is played by Tom Holland when he was younger. So that's fun. And I probably will eventually watch it, but I just haven't yet. It's this was I think this was kind of like a palate cleanser for me. I expected it to be more depraved because, I mean, there's an incestuous relationship, but it's never really an issue to anyone. They just, they love each other and that's that. And, back in the day, you were allowed to marry your cousins. So, I don't know, it's very interesting. But yeah, I think this was sort of like a palate cleanser for me. It was an easy read. It had some dark pieces, but it was really mostly not nearly as dark as the kind of stuff I usually read. So, again, it was called How I Live Now, and it was by Meg Rosoff. And I hope you enjoyed. If you're still here, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, I'd love it if you subscribe. You won't miss out on future uploads. And other than that, please take care of yourself. You are precious and important and the only self you're going to get. I'll